the Latino Free Minds podcast, your home for bold conversations grounded in faith and fueled by a passion for truth. I'm fired up today because we're continuing something truly special, our Know Your Candidate series, where we're sitting down with the men and women who want to represent you and lead our communities here in California. Let me tell you something straight from the heart. California, our beautiful golden state, is worth fighting for. It's worth saving. Packing up and leaving? That's not who we are. We're a people of resilience, of hope, and of unwavering faith, and we're not giving up on this place we call home. Here at Latino Free Minds, we're rooted in our Christian values: faith, hope, and charity. These aren't just words to us. They're the guiding light for how we live, how we love, and how we lead. Over the next year, we're bringing you face to face with candidates who want to shape California's future. Our mission? To dig deep, ask the tough questions, and give you the clarity you need to make the best choice for your family, your community, and your faith. This isn't about politics as usual. It's about finding leaders who share our values, who see California not just as a state, but as a home filled with families, dreams, and God-given potential. We believe that when you listen to these conversations, you'll be empowered to vote with your heart and your conscience, grounded in the principles that matter most: faith in God, hope for a better tomorrow, and charity towards one another. California's future is in our hands, and together we can choose a path that honors our families, strengthens our communities, and reflects the love and truth we hold dear. So grab a seat, open your heart, and join us for these powerful Know Your Candidate episodes. Let's shine a light, lift our voices, and show the world that California is worth fighting for. Stay with us. This is going to be a journey you don't want to miss.
I'm Gloria Romero. I'm a Republican, and I'm running for Lieutenant Governor of California. I was the majority leader of the California Senate, the first woman elected to this historic office. And yes, I was a Democrat. But after seeing years of Democrat one-party rule in Sacramento and its failed outcomes for everyday people, I left the party. I walked away. In the last few years under Gavin Newsom and Democrats, we've seen $250 billion of waste, fraud, and abuse. $18 billion for a bullet train, 0 tracks. $24 billion to end homelessness. Can't tell us where it went. $32 billion in unemployment cash stolen. And it goes on and on and on. Meanwhile, California leads the nation in poverty, food, gas, housing, energy. It's unaffordable for too many Californians. Only half our kids can read and write at basic levels of proficiency. California has been totally run by Democrats for 16 years. They fail us every day. As Ronald Reagan said when he left the Democrats to become a Republican, I didn't leave the party, they left me. Maybe you've never voted for a Republican before, and maybe you don't agree on all the issues. That's okay. But we need to hold the Sacramento Democrats accountable for their failures on homelessness, affordability, crime, education, and housing. I'm going to hold their feet to the fire. Join us. Walk away like I did. Demand a better future for California. Vote for change. Together, we can make California golden again.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Latino Free Minds. I believe we're episode 178. I just went blank on the number, but pretty sure it's 178. And today, if you couldn't tell, we're going to be joined by Gloria Romero. She's running for Lieutenant Governor of California. And, you know, we've been doing this for, 2-3 years now, where we invite candidates on and have them on and have a conversation, get to know them, right? Because our main goal has always been for the voter to be informed when they go vote. So without further ado, Gloria, thank you for coming on the show. How are you doing?
Good to be with you.
Good. No, thanks for coming on. Like I said, you know, we talk to any candidate that's willing to come on. We'll have the conversation with them, you know, and like I told you before, it's like there's no agenda. It's just, hey, we're getting to know each other, right? Obviously, you're running for an important role in California, and we'll talk about that. But for the people that might not know who you are or your experience, you kind of laid it out in the ad, but tell them who you are and what you got going on.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm Gloria Romero, and I am running for Lieutenant Governor of California. Let me give you a little bit of my background. I was the majority leader of the California State Senate in Sacramento. Due to term limits, I left in 2010. But during that time as a senator in California, I worked very hard to advocate and promote parent rights, school choice. And the reason I did this especially is because my mother had a sixth grade level of education. I have a PhD. I ended up chairing the education committee in the California State Senate. And I understood the power of transformation of education. So education was always my passion. And as a senator in California, I wrote some of the most historic laws when it came to education, the parent trigger law, for example. And that's one that gave the rights to parents who are trapped in chronologically failing schools, the right to turn around their schools, to leave their schools, to transform their schools into a charter school, for example. And it was one that was used by many parents after I even left the legislature. I'm the founder of some charter schools in California, continue to advocate for parent rights, and decided eventually to run for lieutenant governor. I'm part of what's called the Golden Ticket for California. Steve Hilton is running for governor. I'm lieutenant governor. Michael Gates is running for attorney general, and Herb Morgan running for controller. So that's a little bit of a backdrop. One important thing is I represented East LA when I was in the California legislature. And that's why the quality, the condition, the outcomes of the schools was so important to me, because I saw, and I think as we continue talking about education and what's important, I saw especially that too many of our East Side schools were underperforming, failing our kids. And without an education, it becomes very difficult to attain the American dream. So that's a little bit of my story. I'm very excited to be running. We've got less than 2 weeks. Ballots are out, and I ask your viewers, your listeners, to please go and vote. And I would be honored to serve as Lieutenant Governor for California.
For sure. No, that's something that, we always encourage our listeners or people that follow us on, most of our following is on Instagram and Facebook. We've always encouraged people, go vote. No matter what. We've never told people, we don't like the candidates, just don't participate. Never. It's always like, look, you do your research, and I get it. For the most part, I don't feel like I agree with Democrats at all. So it would be hard to have to make a decision, right? Let's say if you got two Democrats, it's hard to make that decision, but you got to weigh your options and say, okay, which one is gonna damage me the least, so to speak, right? And I got to make that decision on my own based on my family's needs. So we have always encouraged people to vote, and even though we have the people we like or preferred candidates or whatnot, we never force it on anybody. We always end the message with, do your research, but just go vote whoever you want to vote for. So, and that's why we like doing these conversations. We, like I told you before, is that we don't shut anyone out, and I think it's perfect for the people to listen, because yes, voting is important. It affects the next, depending on the term, right? The next 2 years, the next 4 years, whatever it is, and we want people to. The goal is people to be informed. So. Is that one of you were talking about education, is that one of your top priorities? If you get, let's say Gloria Romero gets elected, is that one of your top priorities once you become lieutenant governor?
It is my personal top priority, but maybe I can talk a little bit about just what is the lieutenant governor and what does it do? And then I think when I do that, you'll see the importance of how big the role on education really is. So let me start there giving an overview. And this is really a lot of fun too, because most people have no idea who is the Lieutenant Governor of California. I've been going up and down the state of California, and we've been doing town halls in numerous cities up and down California, in the Central Valley, in the Bay Area, in Southern California. We were in my hometown of Barstow, California a few weeks ago, and then in Lancaster as well. So we've gone, pretty much everywhere. And those are continuing as well as we speak before the election. But at all of these town hall meetings, I always ask, because I was a former teacher, I was a professor at Cal State LA, here on the east side of Los Angeles. So I always started by saying, okay, raise your hand if you know who is the Lieutenant Governor of California today. And I will tell you, most of the time, out of hundreds of people, maybe 6 or 7 hands go up. And I think that's really telling, that in a post that is so important, that people have no idea who is the Lieutenant Governor. So let me kind of walk you through it, what it is. First of all, the Lieutenant Governor is, and I often joke, I kind of call it the Seinfeld of state government, because a lot of people think it's a job about nothing, and that all we do is we sort of wait to see, is the governor alive today? Because if the governor is not alive, you're looking at the next governor of the state of California. But I think they're all in good health. So I'm not going to worry about that. But you've got to be ready, on your toes, prepared, savvy. You got to know, essentially the policies and the rules, and get ready to communicate with the people. So I would be very well prepared. But the Lieutenant Governor is the president of the Senate. And this is important because it is through the Senate that all of the governor's nominations to hold cabinet posts, to become the secretaries, whether it's of transportation or health or the prison system, the Board of Regents for the University of California, all of the appointments that the governor makes to basically develop, his cabinet, they go through the Senate, and they have to be confirmed in order to be seated. And so this is really important, because I was the majority leader of the California State Senate when I served in the Senate. So in other words, I know where the bodies are buried. I know the rules of the game. I know, again, you have to know how these nominations move forward, the rules, all of the parliamentarian rules, to be able to make sure that the nominations are heard, they're vetted, the hearings are set, and they're done on time. Judgeships as well go through these committees. So that's something that's very important. And the reason why this is so important is because you might even think about President Trump in his first term. There was a lot of lawfare. And so there was reluctance to seat the presidential appointments to his cabinet. And so it basically delays a new administration being able to take over the levers of power, to be able to run the government. And I believe that, let's say that if we win and we sweep this, and it's a end to one-party rule, 16 years of Democrats controlling Sacramento at all levels of government, essentially, I think that there's going to be some lawfare. And what I mean by that is a reluctance to confirm the appointments that are made. So it makes it difficult to get essentially the administration, the government that the people voted for. So you need somebody in that office to be very savvy, to understand the rules. That's me. In addition, what else is there? The lieutenant governor serves as the chief education voice on higher education. And so that means that I would be a regent for the University of California, UC Merced, for example, in the Central Valley. And when I was in the legislature, this was a time when UC Merced was coming into being. I supported the budget issues, support for the development of UC Merced. So I would serve as a regent, a lot of issues there. Also as a trustee for the California State University, like Cal State in Fresno, for example, and also what they call a governor for the Board of Governors for the colleges. And this is the part that I really like the most because my background is education. Most people who know me for the work I did on education. And I'm a recognized education reformer really across the country. So this is the part that really I feel excited about. And it's a tribute to my mother, sixth grade level of education, but she always knew that, she wanted to have all of her children, there were six of us, to graduate at least from school, go on and to be able to compete in this economy. So the reason that this is so important is because even in our college system, we saw that at the University of California, San Diego, for example, we found them issue a report just a few weeks ago. And at this campus, which is considered one of the jewels of the UC system, that 1 out of 8 of their incoming freshmen could not do math at a basic level of proficiency. That's an incredible statistic. And these students then had to be enrolled in remedial education. So that's a real statement on essentially what's happening in our K through 12 system. And in the K through 12 system, what we find is less than half of all of our students in our public education system today, they can't read at basic levels of proficiency. They can't do math at basic levels of proficiency. And for Latino students, it's really a crisis. I mean, and this is why something that, I really champion to say we've got some real achievement gaps, stark achievement gaps. For example, if we take a look at Latino students in California, basically through high school, we find on the latest testing that took place last year, the latest statistics available, only 39% of Latino students in our public education system today are at the basic level of proficiency. 39%. Remember, statewide, it is about 48%, so it's much lower for Latino students. And it's even worse when it comes to math. For math, it's only 26% of Latino students in our public education system in California are at basic levels of proficiency. You do the math on that, that's like 70% almost are not at the basic level. So when you put it together, you have to ask, well, what does it mean? How do you become a doctor? How do you become an astronaut? How do you become an electrician? I mean, you have to know math, you have to be able to read. So it's a real crisis. And then we see that what starts happening in the TK through 12 system, it gets exacerbated at the level of higher education. And many students can't compete. They can't enter the university. So then they end up maybe saying, okay, I'm going to go to community college and transfer. That's what I did. I mean, we didn't have money. I started at a community college. Or you go to a Cal State system as well. I went to Cal State Long Beach, for example, before I went to the University of California. But you find that you find these networks there, and it becomes very difficult to go on. Because in California, we find that even though almost half of the entire California budget goes to education, we're finding these kinds of results. I mean, this is something that just should strike just the outrage of everybody in California, but especially within the Latino community, because we know that if you're not reading by age 9, by third grade, you're basically going to have a very difficult time going forward. So that's why I've really championed this. But other things, too, that the regent would do is I tell people I'm a woman. I know what a woman is. I will support, sports, girls and women's sports. It's just not fair. It's unjust for biological males to be competing with, and against biological females. So I think that's very important. I also find as well that, for example, nobody should be threatened. Their life should be threatened because of who they are. And, I was horrified when I saw after October 7th what had happened in Israel and the mass slaughter and rape and assault of especially so many young girls and women. And then I turned on my television at home and I saw at UCLA, another one of our jewel campuses, I saw, being broadcast live, so many Jewish students who were barricaded in libraries and in bathrooms because their lives were being threatened. And it was absolutely outrageous. I was a postdoctoral fellowship there. I did 2 years there. And I went through those libraries. I walked across those quads. My life was never threatened. And I was from East LA. My life was never threatened at UCLA. And so after that, the federal administration under President Trump did negotiate some compacts with universities, including UCLA, to end the anti Semitism because it is just wrong. I have visited Israel twice. I made a personal pilgrimage to Auschwitz. I think everybody who can should go to Auschwitz because we should understand what hate means and anti Semitism. And to me, never forget always starts at home. So these are the sorts of things that I would lead as a lieutenant governor to fight for the fairness of all, the end of violence, but particularly any violence or threats that's on the basis of skin color or ethnic origin or religion. And that should never be what we see. And that was at UCLA. Right after that happened, both Steve Hilton and I went out. We did a press conference at UCLA. We called on the governor, the lieutenant governor. Where are you? You're a regent. Stand up and do something. There was no answer. So anyway, that's a whole big chunk that I would be looking at as well. And then one of the last major sectors is I would serve on the Land Commission and the Coastal Commission. There's a lot of commissions, but these are some of the big ones. And the Coastal Commission is especially interesting to me because we've seen, half the state of California almost burned down because of an incompetent governor. And then we have a mayor who was off dancing in Ghana when the big fires erupted in the Palisades in the Eden Valley. And so many people lost their lives. They still have been prevented from building. And as lieutenant governor, I would serve on the Coastal Commission because I will speak up about how far woke this administration went on so-called climate change issues when it really came down to just clearing the underbrush, making sure you have fire mitigation policies. And the big issue that the Latino community should be aware of is right now, in the name of climate change, there is a concerted effort to take away our gas stoves and to replace everything with electric ranges. And I tell people, oh no, ya basta. I'm a Latina from East LA. You cannot toast a tortilla in a microwave or the electric range. So I thought I'm going to be hanging on to my gas stove and saying, you're not taking my gas range. And so I called Save the Tortilla as part of my campaign. But these are some of the real things that are happening today, and they're absolute madness. So there's a lot more that the lieutenant governor would do, but I think it begins to tell the story that this is a lot more than just saying, is the governor alive today? And so it is very important, the role that I would play, and I intend to be a very active, vocal lieutenant governor who will show up, stand up, speak up on all of these issues. So that's a lot, but most people have no idea who is the lieutenant governor, and I'm not even going to give publicity. You got to go and look it up yourself.
No, that was a lot. And part of what you were talking about with the whole UCLA thing too, it's like that's the issue with the education system, right? They play on people's emotions, and not just education. From episode 1, we've said it's entertainment. Your favorite athlete, your favorite musician, whatever. They use them to manipulate people, and they use people's emotions, their people's pride to react that way. Like you said, having the Jewish students all locked up and barricaded in, yeah, that shouldn't happen no matter what the race is. But it's that manipulation that has been a problem in our school system. And, a huge reason why a lot of parents have removed their kids from schools. And,
Right.
the homeschool numbers are up. I took my kids out because, when it kind of basically when COVID started going down and the whole kind of, you don't know if your kid was going to be forced to be vaccinated to keep continuing to go to school, and the stuff that the sort of indoctrination, if you will, of the kids, right, into different mindsets or ideologies that I feel like parents have the full authority in kind of navigating all that. So what is your thoughts on that? Because I think that's still a fear for people every day when it comes to homeschooling is, you know, if I send my kid to school, it's like, are they going to force me to, get him or her vaccinated? Like that's a huge fear. Where do you stand on that? Or what is your thoughts on that?
I think your point is what I've seen in California and for decades now. Remember, I left Sacramento in 2010. And before that, I had written many laws. In fact, if I could say this, the issue of school choice is probably the major reason why I finally walked away from the Democrat Party, or as others have said, the party left me because I no longer recognized it. My era was one of JFK. It was the generation that we believed in American exceptionalism. We saw the moon landing. We went to the moon. That was the time of, ask not what your country can do for you, but what we can do for our country. It was putting the American worker first. And my father worked the railroads. My mother had been a domestic worker when she was young, and she was a housemaker at home, taking care of all of the kids. Family built our own home. We're from La Tierra Encantada, New Mexico, migrated to California for jobs and opportunity. And so I was, the younger half of the family was born in California, but we'd always go back and forth to New Mexico over the summers. My grandmothers were there. But the issue of schooling was so important. And what I saw when I was in the legislature was the state of California annually, it would produce the list of all of the schools. And you could see, and by the way, there are about 1,000 school districts in California, 10,000 schools. So you can do the numbers overall. How many public education kids this is affecting? There's about 6 million in California. The vast majority are Latino children. And so we would find, and I would see these lists that would just come out by the bureaucrats, and they would always be ignored. But I would see the statistics and the numbers of chronically failing schools. And I just thought this isn't good enough. So I was a Democrat back then and a Republican now, but the major issue was because the Democrat Party would always fight me. I believed in school choice because you know what? At the same time that I was overseeing the school system, I was also a lead person on our prisons in California. And I saw in our prison system that 70% of inmates don't have a high school diploma. And I believe in personal responsibility. You do the crime, you do the time. But you have to look at those numbers, 70%. And then I would take a look at the school system. And for many of the inmates, because I very much advocated for corrections and rehabilitation programs. And I saw that for many of the inmates in our prisons in California, and I've been in most prisons in California, for nothing I've done, okay, but I've been in most of the prisons as part of the work that I've done, that many of the inmates there were trying to get their GED for the first time. And many of them talked about how, they had wished that they had a better quality education, not only in terms of maybe looking at college preparation, but jobs, the trades, vocational and career opportunities. I mean, the skilled trades are so important that have just been written off by too many. So it's one where we have seen so many parents, and I support them, to take out your children. The governor today, Gavin Newsom, despite all these terrible statistics on proficiency rates, his new budget that was just released, he was talking about how California will now spend on average about $28,000 a year, per pupil in education. And yet we're still finding the same outcomes. And many of us are saying, well, wait a minute, let's allow the parents to decide. I believe in opportunity scholarships. You can call them another term like vouchers. People use different language. But I think, why don't we make these available to the parents? The parents should be the ones that are the chief architects of their children's educational futures. And let the parents decide if they like the local school, they can stay there. If they want to go to a different school, open enrollment laws, I wrote many of them, or to homeschool them and use those finances for what they are developing. There's micro schooling. to go into their local, for example, Catholic school as well, their local, religious school. So I think it's up to the parent to be able to see that. And we've seen these laws across the country, but in California, because of the power of the teachers union that just blocks it, it's one where we have not been able to do that. So I chipped away at much of this legislation. And then to the point of vaccinations and others, you're exactly right, because enrollment in the public education system comes with so many ties to it. I mean, a very woke curriculum. I mean, we even saw the schools telling the kids and hiding information from parents. That is the worst thing. I mean, that is your child. This
Hmm.
is your family. And I cannot believe that in today's districts that there are efforts and there have been, outcomes to hide what's going on with the mental health and questioning of, children always question who they are, but to hide it from the parents and then to potentially take away the child from the parent in a family court system because they aren't, quote unquote, gender affirming, to force the vaccinations despite religious objections or other issues that come up. That's just crazy. So it really went overboard in the pandemic, the authoritarianism of the state. So, if anything, the place where we have so little democracy is in our public education system. And yet, that's probably where we should have the most. And the parents should be full partners to make these decisions. So, all of these, I can't decide on my own as lieutenant governor, but I will be a key voice in leading on these issues on all of the boards and commissions on which I sit. And then I want to develop a TK through 16 education pipeline so that we track it every step of the way, and I will showcase it so every parent knows the caliber of their school, what is being done at their school, and opportunities for homeschooling, microschooling, charter schools, magnets, you name it. So I want for parents to really understand the options that are available to them so parents can choose where they want to take their own child.
Hmm. No, yeah. I mean, you make a valid point, right? Because they're even though you yourself, right, in the position you're in, can't do it all on your own. There's people that give up. You know, like you said, they go quiet because damn, I can't do anything about it on my own, so nothing's gonna happen. And I think that's kind of what we look for. We look for people that are not just gonna take no for an answer, right? You have
Right.
to, even if no is continues to be the answer. Well, guess what? I'm still gonna talk about it. I'm still gonna fight for it. I'm still gonna bring it up. And I think that's from my personal opinion. Sometimes when I see people that are um, elected Republicans, CHGOP ones, sometimes I feel like you guys could be louder. Like you guys could speak up more. And I sometimes I don't see that. You know what I mean? And that's something that when we go vote, it's something that we really look for because it's important. We don't want people to just get in and hey, I tried, and I get it. I get it. We're dealing with the super majority in California, but they you might not have the vote, but you have your voice still, and you got to use it. And this little platform we built, I got no power. I don't have a legislative vote, but I still got a voice, and I'm gonna use it. So you know, I think the education system is one of the priorities for a lot of parents in California, and when you relate it to the Latino community, a lot of parents are first generation or not or maybe just might came over here, so maybe their kids are first generation, and they don't understand how the school system works. They don't understand that these schools are talking to their kids about all this other stuff, right? Like you said, the woke oh my gosh, I'm going blank on the word, like curriculum. They don't know. They just, hey, I'm sending my kid to school. Their hope is, hey, they're getting educated. They're coming home. I'm working all day. There's a lot of Latino families, a lot of families in general that they don't, communicate with their kid, or they don't know what the school is really showing their kid. So I think that's something too that, has to be brought consistently to light to them so that they understand that, hey, it's not just math, science, and history or whatnot. It's like they're talking about this, this, and this, and this too, and they're confusing your kid, and they're potentially hiding things from you. So, kind of, it's so much going on in the education system that just is discouraging, right? And we do need huge change. That's why I really like Sonia, Sonia Shaw, and I really do hope people are voting for her. She's a fighter. Like I said, she's one of those that where I know she's gonna continue to use her voice no matter what. So that's why we really really like her. But to kind of go back into this, one of the questions that got asked is, obviously, ideally, you know, okay, I'll put it in your perspective. You and Steve, for you, would be ideal, right? Another ideal, you and Bianco. Now, let's get a situation where, it's you and a Democrat. How will that dynamic work? Or if it's, you and Bianco, whatever, just if it's not the ideal situation, how do you plan on working with either? Seems like Steyer's trying to buy the governorship, and Becerra's just trying to do a. Becerra's just trying to do a. What did he call it? It's a. Oh my god, why am I going blank? But he just wants the profile piece. There you go.
Oh yeah.
So just kind of, what are your thoughts on that? Because that's something that people do ask and did want to know. So I figured, okay, I'd ask that question.
And that's a really good point. And so it's really interesting because, people ask about the golden ticket, like what is, and, I've known Steve for about 3 years. We worked together on policy issues, Golden Together. I helped him develop the education piece and a number of issues. And we did a number of roundtables throughout California. And then last year, he actually called me. He said, Gloria, I got to talk to you. So I met him and we met here in LA. And he said, I want you to run for lieutenant governor. I want you to be my running mate. I said, Steve, like, we don't have running mates in California because, even though we call ourselves the ticket, you have to run individually.
Yeah.
Not, yeah. So, like the president and JD Vance, you just vote
together. Yeah.
Yeah. But at the state level, we each have to put our name on the ballot and stand there. So that question has come up. So here's what I say. We run together, but I will serve whomever the people of California elect. Because you said it, su voto es su voz. And so it's basically, once you finish campaigning, you govern. And I intend to govern, with fairness to all. When I was in Sacramento, even back then when I was a Democrat, people knew that I was always very fair, respectful, worked across the aisle, worked with Republicans, Democrats. I think we had one independent in those days. And so you have to work with everybody. So the easiest thing, of course, to me, the most exciting thing would be to have Steve Hilton as governor, because, we've been working so much on all of these issues and developed the messaging for California to make it Californiable, right? And to really deal with issues of the economy, education, coastal commission, all these issues. If Bianco is elected, again, too, that's going to be very good to work with him as well, because as Republicans, we believe strongly in values of faith and family and freedom. So those are going to be values that make it easier to work with. But say a Democrat gets elected, once again, as lieutenant governor, probably my job will be harder. But you know what? I'm up to the task. I'm up to working at it. Javier Becerra, I actually have known Javier for many years. He actually was my congressman when he was in Congress. And, I do know Javier at a personal level. I actually find him to be, he's a very decent person. He's muy amable, a very likable person. I know his family. I'm saddened, though, that he's gone so far left that, again, too, I just don't believe so many of the priorities that he has. But he's a decent person. From never met, and he hasn't tried to buy my vote yet. So,
no, just to add on Becerra, it's like that's the thing I see. Kind of watching everything and the debates. It's like him and Steyer are, honestly, to me, they're just trying to say what they think people want to hear. And then, I feel like Becerra's kind of been caught in, so is that a yes or a no? And it's like, I don't know, what do the people, like, he's trying to figure out on the spot, like, what do the people want to hear? It's not so much, hey, this is what I believe, it's like, oh, I got to answer this right, you know? So, but go ahead, continue. Sorry, I just kind of wanted to throw that in there.
But that's exactly it, though. So in that sense, we're running to. It's like a slate. Like we've all sort of endorsed each other, and we talk when we go out on the town halls. We talk about this is what the governor does. This is lieutenant governor. This is the role of the attorney general and the controller. But I think the exciting thing about the ticket is that it helps people understand governance in California and all of the different roles, the powers of the role, but also the limitations of the role. So that many times Steve will say, this is what I would like, but he doesn't have the authority to do that. But the attorney general might have some authorities to do certain things. The controller is really very strong because, under the golden ticket, we are going after waste, fraud, and abuse. That bullet train to nowhere. I mean, that is incredible. The Leering centers that Nick Shirley found. And here in California, check this one out. We haven't found any Leering centers, but we found these fake hospice centers. And one of them, and that's when Dr. Oz came, right? And he found like 400 of them. And one of them, check this one out. There was a hospice center that was actually had the address of a burrito place. I mean, it's kind of like what? It was like one of these joints, a burrito joint, and you think, okay, go order your carnitas, with everything on it, and your burrito, and oh, by the way, I'm going to sign up for hospice at the same time. I mean, the fraud is incredible.
Yeah.
So we can do that. We can shine a light on it, but ultimately, whoever the people elect, we do the job because at that point, you really, and I do respect the outcome. This is the people's will, and you work to make it happen. And I don't like playing politics on the job. Should it be a Democrat governor, I'm going to bring my positions, bring my values to it, work collaboratively to the greatest extent and still advocate, for school choice, for having reasonable fire mitigation policies, fighting on education reform. And so I can only use my voice to the greatest extent that I can, respecting the outcome that the people choose. But can I say on the people, su voto es su voz, this is what's so important because I will tell you, and I'll tell you a story. My very first election was when I ran for the Community College Board of Trustees. So I ran, and that was in 1995 when I first ran for office. And I will tell you that back then, I remember some consultants telling me Latinos don't vote. And it was just right off Latinos. And I was like, oh my gosh, it just writing off a significant part of the population of California. Today, we're looking at almost 40% of the population Latino. But I heard this same thing even last year, like December, when I was thinking about launching the campaign, because I didn't spend a year planning for this. This really kind of came up suddenly. I entered the race actually in January. So it's only been a few months and we've been doing very well. But I heard the same thing, Latinos don't vote. And I thought, no, that is wrong. Latinos do vote, but we have to do the outreach. We have to still overcome those racist stereotypes that, Latinos are just home having their siesta and they're not doing anything. So we did cut a radio ad. It's in Spanish. We're doing outreach to the Spanish-speaking community on several stations in California. I sent you a clip of, this is the video, but they're running on radio, so you don't see the video. But maybe you could show that to give you an example of what we are communicating to the Latino community. And we're very excited about that because we believe that when we do the work, and both Democrats and the Republican Party need to do better in outreaching to Latinos, involving us in the political process, because otherwise people, they don't understand and then they just get shut out. So maybe you could, it's the visual, but you can hear what I'm saying in Spanish to the Latino community. And these are ads running now in California.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and play it. This is the Spanish one.
Hola, soy Gloria Romero y apruebo este anuncio. California era conocido como Estado Dorado, donde podríamos tener una vida mejor, tener una familia, adorar a Dios. Pero esa promesa está muriendo. Pagamos impuestos altos, pero ¿a dónde va el dinero? Vemos tanta pobreza, crimen, fraude. Las escuelas están fracasando. No podemos pagar la renta, comprar una casa. Los políticos permiten hombres en los baños de nuestras hijas y quieren quitar nuestras estufas de gas. ¿Cómo vamos a tostar las tortillas? Basta. Soy Gloria Romero, su candidata a vicegobernadora. Les pido su voto para mí, Gloria Romero, para restaurar el sueño californiano. Vote, Gloria Romero. Hazlo por su familia.
Yeah, don't mess with tortillas.
Exactly. And I tell you, everywhere I go and I talk about that, not only do Latinos say yes, but across the board, people understand it because, I mean, we are a staple of California. Latinos are here. We are respected. We're involved in the community, but the political spectrum, we're often isolated and then we're removed and we're just told Latinos don't vote. So it's so interesting that I heard that when I first ran for office a long time ago. And then now when I'm running again, it's incredible that the same stereotypes that we are just, under the nopal, just sleeping and dancing away and that we don't go vote. And I think the best thing we can do, especially right now, it's the 250th year anniversary of America. The best thing that all of us, all California can do as a birthday present to the nation is to take back our state, end one party monopoly rule that has created so many conditions under which we are suffering. And I think a leading part of that is from the Latino community. I mean, I even look at it as well, too. I'm endorsed by the California Republican Party. This is historic. I don't know that the Republican Party has ever endorsed a Latina. I know not for lieutenant governor in the past. I'm running this year. And although I do not support Javier Becerra or Antonio Villaraigosa, who are both running for governor, and I know both of them because, we're all here from East Los Angeles. I think it's really indicative that there is a movement within the Latino community. So it would be a shame for our community to just sit back and not vote. We have choices. We have platforms. And I think the more that we can get up, because however we vote, and I'm certainly hoping you'll vote Republican, vote for us, and vote for me for lieutenant governor, I think it's important to show those numbers when they do the polling afterwards and they find out, yes, Latinos are getting up, whether we're in Fresno or San Diego or San Francisco, wherever we're from, that we are participating in a political process because we are most impacted, especially when it comes to education, to climate change and environmental policy, to jobs, the economy, preparing for the future. I mean, housing. We've done some work under Golden Together where we found that home ownership is typically used as the key to entrance into the middle class. Home ownership, especially for Latinos, is so much less in California than it is in Texas, for example. And that's why so many are leaving. They're going out of state. They can't afford the high taxation anymore. It's proposed now. Well, they're working on it, but the Democrats in Sacramento are trying to do this thing called a vehicle license, or not the vehicle mileage fee. And that means that they're basically going to tax us for every mile that we take in our car. So they're tracking us, number one, there's privacy issues, but then taxing it. And we see that many Latinos, for example, here in Southern California, might not live in Los Angeles, maybe move further out to the east side or East LA, the eastern part of the county, or in eastern parts of San Bernardino and Riverside, where the cost of housing is less. And so they are going to be the ones who are going to be impacted immediately because they're living further away, but they're still driving into more of the metropolitan areas. So they're going to be assessed more for the mileage that they drive. So that's an issue that we got to speak up on. And then, of course, to all of the, the culture issues, the DEI curriculum, the putting of, boys tampons in the boys' bathrooms. Seriously, that is so unbelievable. I think it's a chance for us to really just say, these are our values and to go out and vote, but to show our participation in numbers, because we have to send a message that, and every Californian should vote. But given the lingering stereotypes, I think it's very important, for us to go out as Latinos and to show our vote.
Yeah, no, that's true, and that's like I said at the beginning, a huge reason why we started doing Latino Free Minds is, getting Latinos to be more informed because yeah, one of the stereotypes is, hey, we're automatically going to vote for the Democrat because, for some reason we've been told they're the party of the poor, but I forget who said this on our podcast, and I'm not going to give that person credit because I forgot. Sorry, but they said it's the party of keeping people poor.
Exactly.
So, so we're trying to enlighten people on that, and just get that participation out there, right? With everybody, Latinos especially. Like you said, it's in California. We're a huge population now, and we got to be better informed, make better decisions, and know our candidates. Know who we're going to vote for and why. A lot of the times too, and I did this when I was young. I was uninformed voter, but hey, I knew, hey, I'm 18, I can go vote now. I didn't know who I was voting for. You know, um, you know, I would look at the name and go, huh, sounds familiar. And my ballots were filled out. You know, I'm one of those people that never voted down ticket. I just, if I didn't know the person or especially especially this ballot. If I would have got this ballot when I was young,
Governors, candidate, crazy.
it's crazy. And then you got all these other races that you're on, and it's like, oh man, what do I do? It's a lot. It's a lot for people to keep up with. People in California. Our government has made it so chaotic, so unaffordable, so hard to live here that people can't even pay attention to the corruption, to what these people are doing because all they're focused on is getting by. So they can't focus on there's this race going on, there's this race, what does this person do, what is that. I get it, and they're just trying to live. They're just trying to get their money, pay their rent, pay their insurance that keeps going up, and what can people do? So the more we try to give them this information little by little, hopefully more and more people are hearing it and waking up to, hey, if I don't, oh, who cares, right? My vote doesn't change anything, or it doesn't matter anyways. Like there's a lot of people that have that mentality. I don't worry about politics, but it really does affect your day to day. Like you said, right? Even gas, right? I know a lot of people are upset with the war in Iran and how that's affected gas prices, but we also got to keep in mind, well, we were already paying close to $2 extra before the war, so we can't just ignore that. Yeah, it probably doesn't doesn't help, doesn't feel good, but there's gas taxes and fees that our local government could just stop and get rid of, and they're
Exactly.
not.
Yeah, California, it's called like the California tax, where essentially we are like $2 higher than across the country. So, it's been exacerbated by the Iranian, conflict, but it's not attributed to that, and that probably will be a short term. But it's still very difficult in the process for working families to be able to fill up the tank and get to work, and it's had a
Yeah.
severe
and
impact
and
on.
the attention level though of a lot of people, especially if they're watching Telemundo, Univision, todo el día, Univision's telling them, hey, this is Trump's fault. That's the attention span they got. They don't
Yes.
tell the people that, well, we had $2 before this. Now this adds to it, doesn't really help. And that I don't know if the attention span is the right word or just the knowledge of how that all works out isn't really explained when you got Univision and Telemundo that are very liberal in the talking points that they give out.
I agree with you. And it isn't just about like La Opinion as well. Like you pick up La Opinion and it's just all orange man bad. And I think that's not telling the story. So, one thing that I really like about you and what you're doing, Latino Free Minds, I think it's important for us because no matter how we decide to, which party we decide to join, I walked away from the Democrat Party. It's kind of this, I looked at it as a plantation that really just took us for granted, just believed that Latinos were going to be part of the Democrat Party, even though there was not there was not a meeting of the needs. School choice in particular, that's the biggest one that I think would make the biggest, most revolutionary changes for the outcomes for so many Latino children and teenagers in California. And the Republican Party as well, I think we have to challenge the Republican Party, and that's what I want to be doing, is to stand up and be strong and to pay attention to Republicans, because if anybody are really fit to be Republicans, it's actually Latinos. I mean, a very strong, as you say, faith, family, freedom, all of these issues, whether it's from the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, taking a look at our religious liberties. It's so important. And, with Memorial Day coming up right around the corner, I think it's very important to always acknowledge that when we take a look at war and we remember who served, it's always, to me, very, it's very sobering when you see the numbers of Latinos, the Rodriguez, the Ruiz, the Gutierrez's, I mean, all the Latino Spanish surnames who have served in our wars, from, whether World War One, Two, Korea, Vietnam in particular, and into the current wars. Latinos are a very patriotic community, and we value peace. But we are ready to go to war when it is necessary to do so. And I think it's very important to pay homage to our veterans and to treat our veterans respectfully when they return home. And this Memorial Day, I just want to acknowledge Clarence Griego. He was 20 years old. He lost his life in Vietnam. He was from my hometown, Barstow, California, middle of the Mojave Desert. I went to his funeral as a very young girl. And I've always remember him and think of him. And there have been others since. Others came home. Clarence did not. But I think it's important when we think about those statistics to remember that our community will question foreign intervention and involvement, but we are ready to go and do our part for this nation. So I think there has to be a great homage to the value that we place on freedom and our liberties. Like I said, from the First, the Second Amendment, due process, Miranda rights, everything, acid, search and seizure, all of these things. I think we are a community that we might not always be able to articulate the law, but we understand when the law and the fairness is not attributed in an equal or a just way towards us. So I'm very proud of our community. And this Memorial Day, I hope we all get up, and whatever we might think of the war that's happening in Iran, I actually look at it as not necessarily starting a new war, but ending 47 years of oppression and fighting in Iran. And so I think there's a way to look at it as the ending of a war as opposed to starting a war. But it's important for us to challenge our party, no matter which one we settle on. It's never going to be perfect. And the way that we, democracy is always imperfect. But the best way to make sure that it's, kind of like, what Abraham Lincoln said, towards a more perfect union, is for us to be involved, to get involved, run as a candidate, school board members, council members. I never thought that I would, back in the day, I never thought that I would be running for, senator, becoming a senator, majority leader. I was this working class kid from Barstow, California, never believed it. And today I'm running for lieutenant governor, and with the hopes and dreams of both my mother and father in my heart, and believing that I can make a good change for all Californians. And at the end of the day, you know what? The Latino agenda, it's the American agenda. It's really what we want. We are, somos Americanos, right? We always say this. And so the Latino agenda is no different from the American agenda. And I think it's important for us to stand up with pride this Memorial Day and then 4th of July, 250 years. And I think we need to tell our story. And when we get to the 250th year celebration, I hope I get to tell a story that this, Mexican-American kid from Barstow, California, who, never believed I would run for office, was elected as lieutenant governor of the state of California. I hope I get to tell that as part of the 250th, year story of America, because I think it is transformational, and I want to make sure that we have our representation for all of us.
Yeah, no, I totally understand that. One of one of the things that that you've probably have gotten this already, but one of the main things that people bring up, when they talk about you, is being an ex-Democrat, right? And their trust is kind of like they don't know, 100%. And one of the main questions that people ask is, what is your stance on abortion? Being an ex-Democrat and how Democrats are kind of, in my opinion, off the rails with that. People kind of want to know, where do you stand? Is there, do you have a stance on that? And the other question, not related to abortion necessarily, but as your time as a Democrat, is there anything that you voted for that you say, I regret that vote? So, just to, if you wanted to touch on both of those.
Sure. On being a former Democrat, what I would say, first of all, is I am not alone. There are so many people. And one way to grow the Republican Party, because we have to grow the party, is to basically bring people into the great, big, beautiful red tent. When I became a Republican, I actually spoke at the Coachella rally. This was Trump's only rally in California. And when I met him, he welcomed me to the party. He didn't give me the 15-point litmus test. He said, welcome. Remember, President Trump was a Democrat once upon a time. President Reagan was a Democrat once upon a time. Bobby Kennedy was a Democrat. Tulsi Gabbard, Leo Terrell, Elon Musk. I mean, the list goes on and on. And I think it's a success story. And I'm one that is able to, in this campaign, to reach out to not only the Republican base, but also independents, nonpartisans, and of course, disaffected Democrats, because there are many Democrats who are just saying, enough. I don't want to be in this party anymore. And I'm one that will urge them, come over and vote. That, those famous words, what have you got to lose? With respect to abortion, all of us, of course, are pro-life. I think that in this case, we have seen that the Supreme Court recently ruled, the Dobbs decision, and basically said it's up to the states. And that's where I believe that it should be. Florida's going to have its version. California's going to have its version. And in California, it basically is that abortion is legal. Florida, under Governor DeSantis, it is legal. I think they have the heartbeat bill up to, 6 weeks. We should not go anywhere. My hope would be that we do not go anywhere past a first trimester. Infanticide is just wrong. But it's one where the courts have decided it's up to the people of California. We can take it up and try to undo by referendum, by initiative. I don't think it's going to pass. And so I think, if anything, what we have to do instead is, given that that's the law, we don't have to fund Planned Parenthood in our budget. We can remove that. But I think we have to provide for support to prevent pregnancy in the first place, unwanted pregnancies. I think we want to promote fatherhood. And that's one where, even when I was a Democrat, like I said, I was basically considered to be a very, pro-Republican Democrat. I supported, for example, the recall of Governor Newsom many years ago. I supported Larry Elder in running for this. So I did all these things, back then. I supported Republican candidates because I always looked at, what are the values? What are the principles? Let's go on that. Sort of part the party labels, because the parties mean so much and really be absent in so much. So I think it's important. How do we fight for, what we believe and try to get to the best thing? As far as, are there votes that, I wish I wouldn't have voted for? Probably so. One of them is, again, too, the jungle primary. I remember in the Senate that night, nobody wanted it, except for, I must admit, and I used to call him Hermanito, Abel Maldonado. He was the senator at the time, Republican. He was from Santa Maria. He later became a lieutenant governor. Remember, he was appointed by Governor Schwarzenegger. But that was the big reform from Governor Schwarzenegger and the Republicans at that time. And it was led by Abel Maldonado on the Senate floor. And it was a long night on voting. And many of us did not want to vote for that. We did. But all that vote did was it basically said, we're sending it to the people of California. The people get to vote. And the people overwhelmingly voted for the the jungle primary that we have today, I think never guessing what would happen. And I think it's basically has been seen to be a modification, a reform, basically that just nobody really likes. So that probably is going to be undone. The Democrats are freaking out; they don't like it now. For all the years that kids were left off, they liked it, but
Hmm.
it's different. And I mean, I understand when people say, well, she was a Democrat, but you know what? So many people up and down California, we were Democrats before, but I think it's very important. If President Trump, the leader of our party, could embrace me and say, welcome to the Republican Party, to me, that was a great honor. And I think it recognizes the length of my record, the fight for school choice. I was even censored once by the Democrats in LA County and they ordered me that I could not call myself a Democrat, basically because I believed in school choice. I was fighting for low income parents and the right for them to move their children out of failing schools. So I think people really have to, like they say, walk a mile in somebody's shoes to see who they are. And I think when people know me and they see my record and my fierce fight, I think they will understand why, I eventually, fought hard to reform the party and finally just said, you know what, I walk away.
Hmm.
And the final night when I did walk is when I saw Bobby Kennedy. He left and I saw him being embraced by President Trump as well. And, to me, I grown up, Kennedy was the icon. In our home, you had a picture of the Pope and you had John F. Kennedy. And we all were Bobby Kennedy supporters, the father. I remember vividly the night he was assassinated. So, it was a very different era. It was a different Democrat Party. And finally, you just say, I don't recognize it anymore. And so, I left. Or as we say, the party left me.
Yeah. No, and then it's funny because you brought up the jungle primary, and I've seen. I think it was L.A. Times kind of had an article. Should we get rid of it now? And it's like, oh, and it's not convenient for you right now. You want to get rid of it, but
Yeah.
but Newsom did say uh, the other day that they had to break the glass.
Oh, yeah.
What do you think he meant by that? What would your
What do you mean by
yes?
that? But it's that's why I think I'm so valuable as a Republican because I used to see a lot of these playbooks and what people do and the extent. I mean, the power of the machine. No doubt about it. There is a political force, like I said, the most powerful political force in California. It's not big oil. It's not the pharmaceutical companies. It's not the big corporations. It is the teachers unions because they've got the biggest war chest because of a captured audience. And I will make it clear, most rank and file teachers, there's a real divide between the executive boards who run the union and just rank and file teachers who basically are forced to pay dues that go into supporting candidates that they themselves do not support. I wouldn't be surprised if there was an effort to recall. Like if you get a Republican governor, that's why I will play a very vital role getting the gubernatorial nominations confirmed because I would anticipate we're probably going to see some, a recall right away, maybe within 6 months, 9 months. Put it on the ballot. Go ahead, special election, Prop 50. Call it suddenly, get the machine out, and you get suddenly taken out. So I think we have to be sensible. And I do believe, that you always respect the vote of the people. Kind of like a jury system. The process, this is what it is. We might not like the outcome, but the jury has spoken. The people have spoken. I don't believe in blaming the voters. We just have to go back and think about how we did and how we worked. But I wouldn't doubt that there might be some recall, maybe blocking of some of the appointments overall. Um, they can try a write-in of sorts, but that's very difficult to do. So, stay tuned. Gavin Newsom, Grifton Gavin. They call him, Grifton Gavin for a reason. So let's see what's up his sleeve, but be prepared. Power will not be given up easily after 16 years of one-party rule.
Hmm. Yeah, no, I agree, and it's something that when I heard him say that, it's like okay, you're saying it out loud. You're gonna do everything you can. What's everything, and I think we have to keep our eye on that and see what it is that they try to do.
Right.
Um, uh, But no, I mean, Gloria, thank you for your time, for coming on. I'll end on a lighthearted question that I saw from the chat here. It said, "Does Barstow not have real street tacos?"
Well, this is one where I thought, okay, so in fact, Barstow has Del Taco is not, they don't have street tacos. Those are the traditional, what they call the Barstow taco. In fact, Del Taco was my very first job as a teenager way back then. But yeah, you'll find so many. I kind of say, okay, I things I'll do as lieutenant governor is really work with Steve and maybe the other ones as well to have them understand Mexican food and cuisine because those are not street tacos. Those are the hard shell, what they call the Barstow taco. But you'll find street tacos in Barstow. Trust me.
Sounds good. No, I just end it on a lighter note. Gloria, I appreciate your time. Thank you for coming on. For the people that were tuning in, hopefully questions were answered, and it takes a lot. We keep this platform open for any candidate, regardless of party, and we've only had one that still considers themselves a Democrat on the show, and and it's an unscripted conversation, and we're trying to get to know you. Voters are trying to get to know you, and we appreciate that you're able to come on and do this with us here.
Well, thank you. And I would ask again, too, to continue to get to know me, go to my website. It's gloriajromero.com, gloriajromero.com. And if you can, make a contribution, $10, 20, 50, whatever can be done. It would be very much appreciated to help me get the advertising out, and hopefully we will make it through the primary into the general. But it does, money is the mother's milk of politics. And it is very important to, I think, to show support for Latino candidates and Latina candidates, especially. Anyway, I very much appreciated Latino Free Minds. It is being able to think outside the box as well and come up with different solutions and never be bound by if you have a D or an R or a G for green or an I for independent behind your name, because that's just the name of the party. But then we bring in what are our values into the process. So I appreciate it. I thank you. And I thank the listeners, the viewers, and look forward to hopefully earning your vote and winning so that I can take our message forward.
Sounds good. Well, everybody, thank you for tuning in. And as always, peace be with you.